just past the 3rd anniversary for Hurricanes Irma and Maria. We're pleased to say that we're at a point where we're getting into a lot of the permanent work that needs to be done so we can build and reconstruct more resiliently here in the territory. And the Office of Disaster Recovery was established to do just that, to be that hub, that center coordination point for the recovery. And of course, a significant part of that responsibility will be to get the construction done for a lot of these damaged facilities that occurred during those horrendous storms of Irma and Maria in 2017. But it is a tremendous undertaking. If we think about $8 billion worth of projects that we would have to undergo, we know that it requires all hands on deck. And we want to ensure that every business, any business that can provide these services get a piece of the pie, really to be able to contribute to the rebuilding of the territory. These funds, of course, comes with a lot of rules and regulations and responsibilities for the contracting entity, as well as the agencies that will be soliciting resources and services for the reconstruction. And we want to do this correctly. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that everyone understands their role and understand the processes so you can have a successful engagement. So it is a tremendous, with a tremendous appreciation that we partner today to provide you with this overview of the process for doing business with the recovery. So I would just like to take this opportunity, next slide, to be able to just share with you some of the processes and also an update on the projects. And I think that's the second presentation. We want to do the presentation for the Office of Disaster Recovery, that we can talk about projects coming online, what you need to do to be prepared, get an idea of the types of projects that will be out in solicitation, and how do you keep up with what's being solicited for by all of the entities, all of the government agencies that will be looking for resources and services, from our health and hospitals to our roads to our power projects, as well as all of the other areas and the housing that we do have the Housing Finance Authority. And we are pleased to have Commissioner Thomas and the Property and Procurement team, who have the responsibility of procuring these for these projects in the manner that the federal government is required. And we understand that there's a lot of issues that can occur, and this is why we want to get out in front of it. We want to make sure that you know what the rules are so that you can be, one, competitive, because the federal government is always looking for proof that we've look for competitive pricing, and that we've gone through that process, and the companies have not been debarred, and companies are well equipped to be able to do the work. And then once our contractors and the contracts are executed, that you're able to provide your invoices and your other documentation within a timely manner, and so that you're able to get paid for the services that you have rendered. We understand that businesses are in the business of actually making money, and it's a partnership between us and these other businesses to be able to do so. So this is pretty much why we wanted to have this rendition of our rules and regulations here today, and making sure that you know exactly how to do business with the recovery. And once we have a successful partnership, then we're able to move forward and rebuild this territory. You know, Governor Blyden and his administration has identified the recovery as one of his primary responsibilities. And I have an audacious team that is continuing to work on making sure that the recovery is moving along. And we can't do this alone. We need to have the private sector involved in being able to carry out these projects the way that we need to get them done. So we do thank you for being here today. I hope you have your pen and your pencil out, making sure that you can take notes and ask questions. We encourage you to ask questions, understanding the bid requirements. Why do I need SAMS.gov to be registered with SAMS.gov? Why do I need to make sure I have a bid bond? Can I do something in lieu of a bond? And these are the types of questions that I know that Commissioner Thomas and his team will answer, and then you'll hear it from the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, who has over $1.9 billion as well that have been contributed to this recovery effort. So make sure you ask your questions. Don't walk away with your questions. And before we wrap up today, I'll be able to share with you some of the projects that are coming online and making sure that you are on our mailing list so that you're the first to know when our projects and solicitations are needed. So I'm going to turn it back over. Thank you so much for being here, and please make sure that you continue to take notes and utilize this program for what it's meant. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And next up, we are going to have the Department of Property and Procurement, Commissioner Anthony D. Thomas.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you first for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to share with the community, especially the business community. I think Director Adrienne said it well. We are here to ensure that the people of the Virgin Islands get the best of what we have to offer, and we're ensuring that these things happen in such a way that this $8 billion does not have to be paid back. So it means that we're here to do certain things to ensure that the policies are followed and the laws. It makes it a little tedious, but it is what needs to be done. With me today is my Assistant Commissioner of Procurement, Mrs. Lisa Alejandro, and my Chief Legal Counsel, Ms. Moranci. So I'm moving to the next slide. I guess I have to do it. Is there any reason why? Okay, the slides, there you go. Thank you. Ms. Alejandro, would you like to?
Good afternoon again. Lisa Alejandro, Assistant.
Hi, sorry, we can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I can.
So this afternoon, we want to talk about a few elements of concerns that usually bidders may not be able to have a seat at the table, or their bids are rejected because of insufficiencies during the evaluation process. So we want to talk about those elements today, and we're going to cover basically submitting your bid proposals in order to satisfy the government's contents to proposal or our invitation to bidders. We're going to also talk a little bit about the contractor's qualifying documents, and that is basically those documents that are required once a contract award has been made. We're going to talk about the importance of timely submission of your expiring documents, which are basically your corporate documents. And these are necessary, especially when we have options under a contract to renew a contract or to continue doing business with the government. So we're going to touch those elements today, and hopefully you would have a much clearer understanding of the government requirements are. Thank you. Next slide. And qualifying documents on the next slide covers a list of documents that are necessary during the process. Those documents consists of the corporate bid
It appears we may have lost Miss Alejandro. Commissioner Thomas? Yes, so Commissioner Thomas, it looks like we did lose Miss Alejandro. Are we able to get her back on? I don't know if you guys are all in the same room or rearranging at this point.
Can you hear her?
No, we cannot.
Okay, okay. So so let me keep up until we have a problem with our connection.
Okay.
The bidding and qualifying documents, the bid bonds, contractors' qualification statements, financial statements, the non-collusion affidavit, the business license, good standing, and proof of general liability. I think you can submit your e-bids and proposals through the Department of Property and Procurement website. It is an electronic process as well. And we really ask that the vendors actually please do have these things prepared to be ready to move forward. A lot of times we find that our vendors have trouble having some of these documents because we wait until the contract is signed before they start finding ways to keep their licenses and the good standings and these type of documents in place. Next slide, please. So our contractual documents are allow my assistant commissioner again to go through the process.
So we are having some technical difficulties, but we're going to jump right back into talking about the contractual documents, which consists basically of your bid bond, which is required especially on all of our federal contracts, as well as local contracts. We're going to talk about your qualifying, your contractor's qualification statements, which basically will give an overview of your qualification as it relates to the particular services that you're bidding on. Your financial statement will say to us that you have the financial tenacity, the background to be able to support and carry out the services under which you're bidding. The non-collusion affidavit is a required document to ensure that the bidder provides some assurance to the government that you have not colluded in any way and that you are submitting a bid that is fair and done in good faith. So this is also a requirement, a requiring document when bids are submitted to the government. And then your business license. It's very important that your business license represent the industry in which you're bidding on the project. And so it must be relative and specific to the industry. And of course, these documents and all of the requirements are noted within the invitation for bid. So bidders are aware of the government's expectation. Another document that we're going to talk about is your good standing. Your good standing certificate tells us that you are up to date in paying your taxes and that you are in good standing with the government. Another document will be your proof of general liability, which is also required when submitting bids to the government on these projects. Recently, the government Department of Property and Procurement has moved forward to accepting electronic bids online. So bidders have the option to email their bids into our e-procurement website, which is ebids _ proposals at vi.gov. They also have an option to submit them via hard copy, but electronic bids are preferred. Next slide. The contractual documents. So once a bid is awarded, we've gone through the process and we've identified a successful bidder, and you're awarded a contract. Then you are required to submit what is called your contractual documents. These documents provide support to the contract in which we're entering into a relationship with the government, and it tells us about the existence of your company, how you were formed in the territory. So in these documents, again, it would be the bid bonds which were previously submitted, and once that contract is awarded, you will be responsible to submit your performance bonds as well as your payment bonds. And especially on federal contracts, it's very important to note that while we may have some preferences on our local contracts that may apply to preferred bidders status, this does not apply to federal contracts. So under the preferred bidders, preferred bidders preference, bidders that are locally formed or have been in business within a territory within sufficient amount of years according to law would be able to submit a percentage off in bonds, or they can request waivers on certain types of assurances. However, on federal contracts, it's very important that we note this process of allowing for preferred bidder status does not apply. The contractor's qualification statement, again, would be a part of your contractual document. The financial statement, your non-collusion affidavit, your Virgin Islands business license, and then your supporting documents. So your supporting documents, again, will tell us how you were formed. If you're a corporation, you would be required to submit your articles of incorporation, and of course your good standing certificate, your Virgin Islands license if you're operating as an LLC, and you have a trade name, then your trade name certificate as well would be needed to support those documents. But the department usually would send out for you what those qualifying documents are along with the bid package, okay, to assist you in preparing for a contract award. Again, proof of general liability is also required, and once that contract is awarded, then that professional liability or general liability, the general liability, must be endorsed in the name of the government of the Virgin Islands, that must be added as an additional insured on the general liability. Now, we do ask if it's of a professional nature, for example, your AE type services, those type of services would also require your professional liability. And on those, we do not request endorsement because they're not a third party insurance, okay? And then, of course, your DUNS number, or proof of SAMS.gov registration is required. It's not only just a federal requirement, but it's also a local requirement. And then, of course, government insurance, your workers' compensation insurance. Bidders can also utilize their own personal type of workers' compensation so long as it represents, meets the statutes for the Virgin Islands. Next slide. Your contract documents. It's very important to renew your documents. Basically, our contracts requires that once a contractor enters into a relationship or a contract with the government, that it must be responsible. Being responsible means that you must ensure that your documents are current, so long as that contract is current, or if you intend to continue doing business with the government of the Virgin Islands. So it means that you must monitor your supporting documents, which is, of course, your business license, your insurances, good standing certificate, which expires annually, your trade name certificate, if it's applicable, your government insurance, and of course, you must stay current with your DUNS number, your SAMS.gov registration. It's very important that you stay current. What this does is allows us to expedite the contracting process, and it provides us a much smoother transition when it comes to extending amendments or just renewal of the contract options, okay? And it's important that we submit these renewals to the Department of Property and Procurement. You can do so during the year. It does not have to be at the end of the contract cycle, but anytime within the term of the contract that those documents may expire, you can submit your renewal documents to the Department of Property and Procurement. We will have the link, will be on the next page to the vendor portal. Thank you. Next slide. So how are we helping you? We are helping you by partnershiping. The government does not benefit when bids are rejected at the table because it really removes the whole hallmark of procurement, which is competition. And so it is our responsibility to ensure that bidders have a clear understanding so that we can be able to make decisions for government that is in its best interest, and as well as our partners be able as well to have interest in those contract and contractual agreements. And so we are helping you by establishing a vendor portal, maintenance portal, to allow you to be able to, again, submit those documents as timely as possible. We also provide assistance to bidders who may be seeking opportunities with the government in getting their SAMS.gov registration. We are also provide that assistance. You can contact our offices. Again, vendors will be able to submit all corporate documents and not just a business license as was previously done, but you will have the option again to submit all corporate documents. You will be able to submit them at any time to ensure that they are timely. And again, we will have smooth transaction into entering into future agreements. We require all vendors to register with SAM.gov. It's a requirement of government and not just locally, but of course, federally. It's a requirement. And we want to also state that what is important is that all of these, a majority of these requirements, particularly SAMS.gov registration, is also required by subcontractors who are doing business with main or core contractors with the government. So these requirements actually trickle down also the need for a subcontractor on a federal contract as well to be registered and have a DUNS number. We also send out a notification for expiring documents through the vendor portal as well. So we really invite you to register if you have not done so already, so that we can assist you as well throughout the contractual process. And again, all documents should be submitted. Our email link is there to vendormaintenance@vi.gov. Thank you very much, and we hope you have questions for us. We stand available to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the wealth of information. I know that we will definitely have some coming in already through the chat, and as well, I know there are more going to be coming in through Facebook, but we are going to save those questions for the end. So please just keep on putting them in there. We'll be sure that So coming up next is the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority discussing Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery, commonly known as CDBG-DR program. And presenting will be Ms. Antoinette Fleming, CDBG-DR Director, and Jeanine Blyden, Procurement and Contracting Manager.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chanel, Ms. Peterson. Today, I'll be discussing the doing business with the recovery and what the CDBG-DR Disaster Recovery Program and Mitigation Funds involvement are all about. Next slide, please. So our VIHFA administers both the CDBG Disaster Recovery Funding Program and the Mitigation Funding Program. They are funded, we receive the funds from HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. But what is different between the two funding grant programs, disaster recovery has a specific debt tied to the disaster, whereas mitigation funds relies on reducing the loss of life and reducing the risk of future hazards. Next slide, please. On this slide, I'm going to talk about the application process flow. So basically, HFA, we do business with subrecipients and developers as our main stakeholders. And a subrecipient can be a unit of the local government, a nonprofit, or any other entity that fits that subrecipient role. Developers are mainly with what we call the housing component. They work with providing public and affordable type of housing communities in our territory. So when you look at application process flow, subrecipients all have to go through what we call a capacity assessment. At this capacity assessment, we look at the entity's ability to manage disaster recovery funding, your policies and procedures, your ability to manage federal funds, and your grant management system you're using to manage and track those funds. Once we have passed that, we enter into a subrecipient agreement with the entity. Once that is executed, that entity is able to develop a DR application. Once the application is completed and approved, the HFA enters into a project agreement with that entity and issues that entity a notice to proceed for that particular project. Once that notice to proceed is issued, that entity is allowed to start their procurement process, and they're able to hire either an architect or a contractor to undertake the disaster recovery project. Developers, somewhat similar to a subrecipient, has a similar project process flow, but their processes are slightly different, and here's where it's different. We do not do a capacity assessment, but they are required to do a project application, a DR application. They don't have a project agreement, but what is developed is the project is underwritten and a loan agreement is executed, and that is what is issued and given them the notice to proceed. Again, the project starts and a facility is constructed and placed in service. If you want to hear more information or get more information, detailed information about the process flow, you can please visit our website, hfa.gov or vihfa.gov or cdbgdr.vihfa.gov. Next slide, please. Procurement opportunities within both programs. There are several. Under infrastructure, and infrastructure deals with road improvement, electrical improvement. There are also housing opportunities for procurement, public and affordable housing, single family housing, economic revitalization. We have projects that would dredge our harbor. We are also looking to deal with economic development activities for Vision 2040 as well. We also can do planning activities, and we also can do public services and public facilities. So there's a series of projects that a disaster recovery program can undertake. And there are several procurement activities and opportunities that lie within several of the project programs listed above. Next slide, please. So I could not leave the discussion without talking about our current action plan and what we're doing right now in the territory. We are currently making changes to our action plan to move money within our program, allow several things to take place. Move more money into housing, move more money into Randolph-Holly Power Plant project. We're also the recipient of an additional $53 million from HUD, and we need to be able to write an action plan to HUD and give them some information on what we're gonna do with those funds. We also created a new sector called Public Services and Public Facilities. We also talk about the low and moderate income waiver that we're requested from HUD. And we also gave the public some projections and outcomes of what our funding is all about. So I encourage everyone to go on our website. You will see our draft amendment document, and you can review and give us a comment by the October 3rd deadline. Next slide, please. Our allocation breakdown is as follows. You have heard several times in different conversations that VIHFA is a recipient of HUD funds. It's a total of $1.9 billion. But this is how the allocation was broken down. We did not receive one allocation with 1.9. HUD granted us the initial tranche of money. the $242 million back in July of 2018. In 2019, they also approved the second allocation of $779 million. We are currently doing our amendment that I just mentioned, amendment number two. We are working on allocating the $53 million that we've just been the recipient of and making those substantial changes that I just talked about. Also included in the $1.9 billion is tranche number 3. It's a total of $774 million. And that is mitigation funds. And mitigation deals with risk assessment and projects that would help us to be more resilient in the territory. Our electrical improvement funding is a total of $67 million. The Federal Register notice for that allocation has not been written as yet. So we are still working with HUD to identify what those projects may be, what not only may be, but what type of activities they may include. That is how we are right now to the total of $1.9 billion. So I await any other questions at the end of the program as it relates to CDBG, DR, and MID funding. At this moment, I'll turn the presentation over to my counterpart, Ms. Jeanine Blyden. Next slide, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Next slide, please. Good afternoon, all, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Jeanine Blyden. I'm the Procurement and Contracting Manager at the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority. We just wanted to let you guys know ways to engage in any of the procurement actions that we may have. Housing Finance would advertise all solicitations through local publications. Of course, given the new norm and the COVID mandates, we ask that all solicitations or proposals be submitted electronically. We have our website for procurement submittals, our procurement@vihfa.gov. Our solicitations may be solicited in RFP, RFQ, or IFBs, and all future and current procurement opportunities are posted on our websites, www.vihfa.gov and cdbgdr@vihfa.gov. And of course, they'll be advertised in all local publications. Not wanting to echo everything that was explained earlier in the procurement process from our procurement colleagues at Property and Procurement, but I wanted to just let you guys know more about the DUNS number that you've been hearing so often. It's the Data Universal Numbering System, which is abbreviated as DUNS, and it's a proprietary system developed and managed by Duns & Bradstreet that assigns a unique numeric identifier referred to as the DUNS number. It assigns this number to a single business entity to support credit reporting practices, which allows us to verify if your company, regularly files for your taxes and if you're up to date with whatever tax mandates there are in place. And then you've also heard about the SAMs and registering your company with SAMs. So once you register your company to do business in the US government by completing this registration, the SAMs allow government agencies and contractors to search for your company based on your ability, your size, your location, your experience, and your ownership. So in the instance where you're actually looking to be considered or your company to be noticed because of your qualities and like to be included in any of these publications that we put out for solicitations, this will allow us to search for your company and probably reach out to you when we're trying to get bids out to expand the competition between the proposals we receive from companies. Next slide, please. Now we have a lot of bidding and procurement pitfalls. These are some of the reasons why companies or contractors might not be considered when we try to enter into a contract with them. Late submittals of proposals, where each solicitation that is publicized with a submittal deadline, if any of the proposals not received by this requested time, would not be considered. We have people that submit late submittals or late proposals to us, and as sad as it may be, we have to tell them, we have to decline your publications, your submittals, because we have a deadline. We have to stick by the deadlines. We've even made it easier now for proposals to be submitted electronically, and we urge everyone that's interested in participating in our programs to try to stick with the deadlines. Not following format requests or proposal contents. All of our bid packages should be formatted as requested in each solicitation. and not submitting documents to be deemed qualified can be a pitfall as well that can allow you to be disqualified or not be considered deemed. And mandatory attendance. Some of our publications, we have mandatory pre-bid conferences for all potential contractors. However, if it's missed, pertinent information may not be received by that contractor, and they may not be able to submit a proper proposal. And again, it's considered a pitfall, and one of the reasons that you may not be considered a contractor or win a proposal bid with the Housing Finance Authority in regards to the DR program. Next slide, please. Antoinette, I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Antoinette Fleming to go ahead and discuss this.
I am ready. I'm here. Construction contractors, we have some federal requirements that if you're bidding on a DR or mitigation type activity, here are the federal requirements that you'll be required to adhere to. When you get a bid package from us or from property procurement, it would include information that contains the labor standard, Davis-Bacon Act, the Copeland Act, the Contractor Work and Safety Standard Act, and the Section 3. Next slide, please. In a very short time, the Davis-Bacon refers to payments of prevailing wages. The Contractor Work and Safety Standard Act requires payment of time and 1 hour for 1.5 hour in excess of 40-hour work week. The Copeland Act, Anti-Kickback Act, makes it a federal crime to require anyone to give up or pay back portion of their wages. The Fair Labor Standard Act, FLSA, contains the minimum wages, overtime, and child labor requirements. Section 3, it requires at least 30% of the permanent full-time employees of the company, either in a government-assisted housing, or they have a household income that is below the HUD income limits, or they're homeless. Basically, for Section 3 is 30% of the full-time employees must be low to moderate income. Next slide, please. So together, VHFA is working with several government departments, our agencies, developers, and our nonprofit organizations in developing subrecipient agreements that would include various procurement opportunities. Jeanine, Blyden, and myself, we stand available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fleming and Ms. Blyden. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Williams, and we're going to start to take some questions. So we're going to just jump right into the chat and start with some questions from the top. Well, the first one, a lot of folks have been asking, will this presentation be available? Yes. So by tomorrow, you can visit our EDA's website, www.usvieda.org/webinars, and you'll find this presentation available in addition to the recording of the live. Also, you can also go to our Facebook and you will find the live recording on Facebook as well. So that answers at least 4 different times. Another question that came in is the qualification statement the same as a capability statement?
Good afternoon. That's a great question. Our Chief Legal Counsel will answer that question for us. Ms. Magdalene Moranci, come on.
Hi, good afternoon. So the Department of Property and Procurement issues a document for our bidders to include the information. That document is called a qualification statement, and that includes all of the information that we need to assess responsibility and responsiveness. If it's called a capability document for another group or another entity, it will entail what information they need for their assessments. But for the executive branch's position, we call it a qualification statement.
And I believe this next question may be for you guys as well. Does any of the opportunities pertain to IT infrastructure and resolutions?
So there are a number of projects that are available that are being advertised. Some of them do include IT assessments, and they're all listed on dpp.vi.gov.
This is another one for property and procurement. So the presenter stated that bid bonds are required for all federal contracts. Are there any federal contracts that does not require bid bonds?
On all federally funded construction contracts, bidders must include a bid bond that is typically 5% of their bid amount. There are certain professional contracts, like certain A&E services, that might require a bid bond as well at the beginning of the process. But for a lot of the professional type services, contracts, bid bonds are not normally required.
Thank you. Another question also for DPP. Will federal procurement opportunities be listed locally as well as on the SAMS.gov website?
All of the projects that we're listing on the DPP website, they are the local projects. As far as the federal projects being issued by the federal government, they're not listed on our website.
Okay, thank you. And though this was answered privately, just because it was asked in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and respond. So the question is, to obtain a VI license, do you have to live on the island? And the answer is no, you do not. Would either property procurement or HFA, anyone else like to add to that? Besides just no. Okay. All right, so the next question. So an individual specializes in modular housing, not trailers or double wides. They've built many housing on the US East Coast that meet hurricane standards. Would this type of housing be permitted?
I guess Chanel, good afternoon. This is Antoinette Fleming. I guess that is referred to HFA. The type of housing can be permitted in a territory. If you're asking about if that particular style can be permitted, that person may need to also speak to DPNR, because DPNR, Department of Planning and Natural Resources, has the authority to permit certain construction methods of modular units.
Great, thank you, Ms. Fleming. Another question probably to you again. What is the best way to identify current and upcoming project opportunities? I believe this is specific to CDBG-DR, but DPP, if you'd like to answer as well.
So for HFA, all our procurement opportunities are found on our website, via hfa.gov. We have a tab called Procurement, and it has a list of current procurements on that tab as well. And this would include any procurement that is subrecipient, such as Department of Public Works or WAPA. Any entity that we're doing business with for procurement will be listed.
I also want to add that this is Adrienne Williams-Octalien. My wrap up, I will also outline several of the projects that are upcoming, that are coming out down the pike in order to go out for solicitation. So that information on a case-by-case basis will be provided before we end today's call.
And for Department of Property and Procurement, all of our opportunities are listed at dpp.vi.gov.
Thank you. So wealth of places to identify these project opportunities. One of the questions, what about IT infrastructure? What area would that fall under? Is it being addressed as well? I know this was partially answered, but if there's more to add to that on IT infrastructure. I'm guessing, let's see, property and procurement. Is there any more that you'd like to add with reference to IT infrastructure and areas that this would fall under?
The Bureau of Information Technology is the executive branch's information technology arm. Any of the IT related projects are either through BIT, sometimes through the Department of Education, but they would all be listed on our website, dpp.vi.gov.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'd also like to add to that, that there are a number of recovery projects related to a IT infrastructure that is in various stages of development. So there will be upcoming opportunities on the recovery side for IT type projects.
Wonderful. Another question is, must the general liability be underwritten by a USVI agency? So I believe this actually could probably go for DPP as well as BIHFA.
From the Department of Property and Procurement's perspective, for the contracts on the ground, the insurance must be underwritten by an agency in the USVI, yes.
Jeanine Blyden from HFA. Echoing what was just said from Property and Procurement, yes, it should be underwritten by a USVI agency.
Keeping it local. Thank you. So though many may be familiar with the term, but we do have a question. What is a bid bond?
Okay, Magdalene Morency, Property and Procurement. So a bid bond forms, it's a method of surety, it's a method of guarantee. It's for a percentage of the bidder's bid. And the best way to think of it is somewhat like it works like an insurance policy. So you're paying for protection. It shows that the contractor is responsible, the contractor is serious, and one of the things it allows is if the contractor fails to submit the contract within a certain period of time afforded by the government for execution, the government can call on that bond and the contractor loses that money. So it's a form of incentive.
Thank you. And that's also a really good, Google search with regard to bid bond. You'll find lots of information. And if you do need additional assistance, any of our agencies are available to talk more in depth on how you can secure that bid bond. This one is directed to DPP. Has the DPP changed its policy of requiring nonprofits to be 501c3 tax exempt to compete for contracts, since nonprofits can compete for contracts directly from the federal government without 501c3?
So there is no requirement that a nonprofit be tax exempt under the IRS code. A nonprofit can be tax exempt or not. If a nonprofit is tax exempt, the documentation that they would submit with their bid packages will be different from what an entity who is not tax exempt would submit. But there is no requirement that you must be tax exempt in the 501c3.
Perfect. Breaking myths today. Breaking myths. Love it. So are all the procurement documentation requirements the same for property and procurement and for Housing Finance Authority?
Jeanine Blyden, Housing Finance Authority. I don't think there's too much difference, but just to be sure, I would urge anyone interested in becoming a contractor to visit our websites and see what documents are required.
Thank
And
you.
similarly with the Department of Property and Procurement, all of our solicitations will include instructions and a list of documents that will be required for award, and if awarded, what will be required to execute the contract. And so we urge all bidders to comply with the instruction sheets.
Thank you. Another question came in. How does one apply for the VI business license? What website will we need to use? The best place to start is Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs, and their website is www.dlca.vi.gov. Another question that came in, could you provide examples of some professional A&E federal contracts that require bid bonds? And that would probably go to initially property and procurement to answer.
One instance would be the design build contracts. That's where one contractor does the design and the construction on a project.
Thank you. And I see that Ms. Ellis has also provided the website for that license information in the chat as well. All right, so a few more questions. We got plenty of time. What department would I find contracts to upkeep the parks and the side of the roads?
So those contracts are issued on behalf of either the Department of Public Works or the Department of Sports, Parks, and Recreation. All of those contracts are processed through DPP, and so they would be available on dpp.vi.gov.
Thank you. Additional question. Could you please provide a brief explanation of the negotiation process once a bidder enters into negotiation with property and procurement? That definitely seems like an extended answer, but perhaps, I don't know if there's like a recap or even a timeline that could be provided to provide some guidance on that inquiry. I see some back and forth going. Property and procurement, is there, or maybe there's a website that they can reference on what that negotiation process looks like?
We would urge you to visit the DPP website, dpp.vi.gov, and even our procurement manual, which includes a breakdown of the negotiation process.
Perfect. Another question that came in, if a contractor's competitive bid is not successful, what information is available to the contractor to review why the bid was not awarded? And this can definitely go to property and procurement as well as Housing Finance Authority.
One of the options a non-successful bidder has is to request a debriefing from the department if they're not awarded. In going through the debriefing, the department will go through with the contract, with the unsuccessful bidder, how their bid failed to comply either with the invitation, how they lost points, going through their strengths and their weaknesses versus the awarded contractor. A non-successful bidder does not have the opportunity to go through the successful respondent's proposal, just because a lot of times those documents contain proprietary and confidential information, but we are able to have a discussion with the non-successful bidder in terms of how they measured up and what they can do better to have success in their future.
Thank you. Ms. Blyden, would you like to add to that?
I'll be echoing on what she just said. It'll be the same process for housing finance as well.
Okay, perfect. And just before we go to the Office of Disaster Recovery, we're going to take another question. For federal contracts, are all bid proposals submitted available for the pass-through agency document records?
Is the question with respect to contracts from the federal government or federally funded contracts through grants?
That's a great follow-up question. We're gonna give them an opportunity to, okay, so funded through grants. Does that help with the providing the response? I think a little bit more clarity is needed with that question. So if you can perhaps go ahead and rephrase it in the chat, it would be greatly appreciated. And we're gonna go on to another question. Can you speak on how the actual awards paid out are finances or payments only exchanged after services are rendered.
I'll take that. So any of these projects that we are referring to, that's related to our federal recovery grants, it's always on a reimbursement basis. So you would have to make sure that the work is conducted, submit the invoices, and also be able to verify that this work has also been completed. And then these invoices are submitted through the payment process to process checks to be remitted to whoever the particular vendor is.
Thank you. So we are going to switch gears for just a moment. We're going to have another individual share their screen from the Office of Disaster Recovery, Ms. Ellis, and we'll have the Director Williams-Octalien continue. Please be reminded to place all your questions in the chat. And if you are on Facebook, please place your questions in the comments. Director? You're currently on mute, Director.
Thank you again. And your questions are excellent, and please don't go away with your questions. Make sure that you list them here. We'll do our very best to answer them. And of course, there's opportunity to follow up afterward for specific issues. But I do want to take an opportunity to go through some of the current status of our recovery projects by our 5 focus areas. So if we can move forward in the presentation, we can take a look at the key areas. The governor has identified his priority areas as health and hospitals, roads, schools, housing, and power. And also what we'd like to do is just share where we are with some of these projects. The Wang F. Louis Hospital and the Schneider Regional Medical Center issued an RFP several months ago for A&E work for permanent facilities. And at that project, go back please, that project is on, the vendor is about to be selected. Let's go back to the previous slide, please. So that vendor has been closing out for that evaluation process, so that the vendor should be moving to the process of being selected for potential award. But they're currently going through that process. Here we go. And also the temporary facility on St. Croix, it's moving towards completion. Again, there's several solicitations that are pending out. So you can, it's on our website as well. You can look forward to propane solicitation for propane tank relocation, commissioning services, and also again in the healthcare facility area, the Charles Howard Medical Center, we will be going out for solicitation for the architecture and the design for that facility. Also currently out for solicitation is a IFB for emergency roof repair for the Herbert Grigg home on St. Croix. All right, and then as we move towards the Housing Authority, one of the key projects that was awarded and work has begun, the demolition of Estate 22 on St. Thomas, and that work has started. And there's also work that's going on for the roof repairs at Kerwin Terrace on St. Thomas. There's continued work that will be done, and solicitations will be issued for additional buildings for Kerwin Terrace on St. Thomas. So you can look out for that as well. And then again, the Housing Authority solicitations are on their website also, but if you're registered with the Office of Disaster Recovery, you will be getting notifications on all of the solicitations that are out on all of these other sites, including DPP, the Housing Finance Authority, and any of the other autonomous instrumentalities for recovery work. Okay, and next slide. And also the Housing Finance Authority Envision Tomorrow program. Again, they're out looking for mini bids, and they're doing over 721 homeowners to date has been deemed eligible. So of course, construction and contractors will be necessary in order to carry out that work. They're also going out for mini bids, solicitations. So if you're interested and you have your general contractor's license, you can contact Nicole Roberts at 777-4432 so that you can get on their listing as well if you're interested in participating in that program. Next slide. And the water, of course, again, power is another priority. There's work going on with the Water and Power Authority on the East End Electrical Substation. Then on of course, the composite poles, there's also out because work is being done in that regard. Currently, there is a solicitation out for a consignment of electrical products. And coming down the pike, again, would be the Donald Francois substation repairs. The design for that will be out to bid, as well as the St. Thomas Submarine Cable Survey Services will be out for solicitation very shortly. So if you're in that area of work, then you can look out for that. On our road projects, again, there's several road projects that are nearing completion to be awarded. The Duneau Bypass Road on St. Thomas, and then north side on St. Croix. There's also work to be done on the Mahogany Road as well. There's several other solicitations that will be out. Again, those that are going to be solicited through the Department of Property and Procurement will be on their website as well. And also the Department of Education, the work has started for the demolition of the Arthur Richards Junior High School. These other contracts have been awarded for the demolition of Evelyn Williams and Charlotte Amali, along with the Wheatley Skills Center and Goddess Abraham on St. Thomas. What we get ready to look out for is an RFP for the design for the Arthur Richards Junior High School on St. Croix, as well as for construction services for the repairs to the Curriculum Center in the St. Thomas, St. John district. So those will be out very shortly. You can look out for those. Then, of course, there are a number of parks that on St. Thomas and St. Croix and St. John that will be out to bid very shortly for the repairs of all of those baseball parks across the territory. So you can see them up there. The Kerwin Terrace Ballpark is out front. That is ready for you. Again, be solicitations being accepted. There are others that will be following shortly behind. Winston Ramo Winston Ramo and Milton Newton, Alvin McBean and Ezra Fredericks. The Valimar Lookout Point also, that will be out for, again, for solicitation and to get quotes. The Joseph O'Bain Ballpark in Frenchtown, Educators Park, and of course, Lionel Roberts Stadium. And then over in Smith Bay, Lionel Smut Richards Ballpark. Those are ones that will be out front for St. Thomas. And again, the St. John Community Center, that project will be out for bid as well. So if you're in that district and you're interested in doing work over there, please look out for those. And then moving over to St. Croix, these other projects will be front and center in terms of getting out the Renhall Jackson Complex, the State Profit Community Center. There's several playgrounds and parks that are out, as well as the Cokie Point Beach, or Cokie Point is actually St. Thomas. Cokie Point is out for solicitation. So if you're again interested in those areas that you put in a bid, that's your area of expertise. And next slide, please. All right, and if you're into doing studies, that's your area of expertise. Well, these are just updates on the watershed studies and the derelict vessels in the St. Thomas St. John district. Next slide. So these are some of the projects that we know will be coming down the pike within the next 30 days. And again, if you have if you don't have, you're interested in any of these and you don't have your SAMS, you're not registered with SAMS.gov, or you don't have your DUNS number, and you are not aware of what your other qualifications should be, then you should start preparing for all these potential opportunities that will come down the pike. And if you want to just keep abreast of what's going on, you can send an email to info@usviodr.com to be added to our mailing list. And so once new solicitations are issued, we will send out an email. And then you can regularly check our website at usviodr.com. Click on doing business with ODR. And again, all of those, in some cases, the actual solicitation will be there. In other cases, you'll have links to the appropriate site for you to take a look at and be able to submit your packages for consideration. So I know I wanted to make sure that we get another opportunity to go back and ask any questions, answer any questions that you may have. Our goal here today is to make sure that we get a lot of input, that we prepare our contractors, and making sure that everyone understands this process. There's one thing that has been said: when you track a project that has issues on the back end, where there breakdowns, sometimes you can actually trace the issue straight back to the solicitation. So we are making sure that you understand the overall process, be aware of the opportunities, and really get more of our local contractors, or just contractors in general. You know, rebuilding the territory across 3 islands really is going to take a heavy lift. And we want to make sure that our contractors and the people who are interested and experienced and have the expertise to do this work gets a fair chance at doing so, so that we can continue to rebuild and really build what we're saying is a legacy of resilience here in the territory. So with that, I don't know if there's any additional questions that we need to answer. We can answer those and making sure that no one walks away with their questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Director. Yes, we do have a couple more questions that came in. So we did have one clarifying question that was presented earlier, and it is, one moment. For local contracts paid with federal funding, are all bid proposals submitted in response to the advertised RFP available for the pass-through agency's document records? Property and Procurement, are you now able to respond?
When we speak to the pass-through agency, are we referring to a situation with, let's say, HFA over the CDBG-DR funds, and then doing subrecipient agreements? It's not clear what we mean by pass-through agency.
Okay, so let's see. I guess we'll wait a little bit for a little bit more clarity again on that one. And maybe Ms. Tull or Mr. Tull, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead. If you are able, I'm going to go ahead and just unmute you. And if you'd like to ask your question live. Or not. It's not, you're not being, okay, there you go.
So my question is that relates to insurance. And it's sometimes very difficult to get, especially professional insurance, through local companies. And because they all use the same underwriters who may or may not want to insure you. And an insurance, if they do, is extremely expensive. And so is there any option whereby a company can use an outside agency to get affordable insurance to meet the requirements of the government?
If a contractor is having issues with coverage, I would advise them to speak to Banking and Insurance, the Office of the Lieutenant Governor, as the Lieutenant Governor is the insurance commissioner for the territory, and that office would be the one who can make the call as far as coverages and what can be paid out and covered in the territory.
Thank you. And I realize that there's another question. Ms. Liebert, are you able to ask your question again? My apologies on that. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Hi, good afternoon. So I'm trying to find out if we are the monitoring agency and we would like to get the bid proposal. Are they available to us? We're monitoring the grant, federal grant.
You're the cognizant grantor agency?
I don't know what you mean by cognizant. So if you could explain that to me.
Are you the awarding federal agency?
No, not the awarding federal agency.
So then I'm a bit confused. In what capacity would you be reviewing the proposals?
We are well, I am working for an agency that received the money for the territory, and we have the subrecipients. So we are monitoring the subrecipient payments or on the grants.
If you're monitoring the subrecipient's performance, then you would be able to get that information from the subrecipient.
So all of it is submitted to the subrecipient, that's what you're saying?
All of it is submitted to the subrecipient, and it depends on the grant, the subrecipient, and the guidelines and the regulations that come with it. So I can't speak on generalities without knowing the specifics.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And we have just a few more minutes left, so we're going to take a couple more questions and we will go ahead and have the closing. So just two more. Let's see. So another question asks is, along the lines of insurance, what's the coverage you typically require? We have a $5 million general policy as well as a workman compensation. I want to be sure we're meeting all requirements.
So the policy limits required per contract depends on the contract. Compensation documents will stipulate what types of insurance coverages will be required and the minimum policy limits that a successful awardee will have to meet.
Great, thank you so much. Well, at this time, we have no further questions. And if there is, again, any other questions that perhaps needs additional inquiries, you can always review this presentation, which will be available. And so with that, we're going to have the closing by Director Williams-Octalien.
All right. And again, I want to say thank you for participating this afternoon. The knowledge is absolutely power. And I want to make sure that your engagement with this recovery effort as contractors, this is definitely a public-private partnership, that you receive the information in order for you to be successful. Very knowledgeable team at the Department of Property and Procurement. As you can see, they understand this process. And if you have questions, I know that they're willing to be able to provide you with that information so that you can have a positive experience. Also, I want to also thank the Housing Finance Authority for, again, their participation and making sure that you understand what you need to do in order to comply with their programs. All these federally funded projects comes with rules and regulations, and knowing what they are beforehand, make sure that you're in a position to be able to successfully navigate your way through your contractual arrangement. What we also need to do is to make sure that you have the information about the bids and about the projects that are coming down the pike. And we want you to make sure that you register or you have your information coming, that you're on our mailing list and you're aware of all of the projects that are there to bid on, and again, wanting you to understand all of the processes. We have a great demand and opportunity here in the territory for a number of areas, from folks doing architectural and engineering design. As we move through, a lot of our projects are in the design phase. So, and having contractors who understand how to build here in the territory, because it's important for us to bring projects in on time and on budget, because there are parameters by which the funding is available. And then also for us to be able to process your payments on a timely basis, because we know that contractors cannot wait for months upon months in order to be able to get paid. So those are critical for us. There's central government agencies as well. We know the autonomous instrumentalities have their own processes, but overall, as the Office of Disaster Recovery, we want to make sure that all of our stakeholders are involved. All of our stakeholders are engaged. The recovery continues to move forward. So we want you to share this information with others. Again, it will be available on our website. There's a host of information on our website at usviodr.com that tells you about the status of all of the projects, the availability of the projects that are coming down online. So again, thank you for being here and for spending time to understand and invest into your business by making sure that you're more informed than you were yesterday. I want to also thank the USVI EDA for doing their job and helping to build the economic development of this territory, because it is critical. And right now in the COVID times, where we see that businesses are closing their doors and they're having difficulties just staying afloat, getting these construction projects out ahead can also cushion the blow that we can experience. So again, thank you. I see one more quick question that's asking, what are we doing about contractors to getting paid on the last program? Well, the first thing that we're still pushing forward. The Housing Finance Authority and the Office of Disaster Recovery is working very closely with FEMA. We had a meeting today. It's just constant. It doesn't seem that way on the output side, but they're always saying that we're closer to the end, and we're at 90. They were at 90% reviewed of all of the cost reasonableness issues that the STEP program has, and we're hoping that FEMA will give us a response so that FEMA can release the funds that we can pay the contractors. But what we're doing on a preventative side is making sure that we have these types of workshops and making sure that our contractors are better informed so that that issue is not repeated going forward in the recovery, because again, knowledge is power. So thank you again for being here. And just remember that the Office of Disaster Recovery is making sure that we continue to build a legacy of resilience. So thank you. Chanel Peterson, you did a fantastic job, and we're wonderful opportunity to be a partner with you here today, the Department of Property and Procurement and the Housing Finance Authority. We will continue to work together in this great partnership. And thank you all.
Thank you so much, Director. And of course, again, thank you to ODR, Department of Property Procurement, Housing Finance Authority for attending the webinar this week. Next week webinar will be Wednesday, October 7th at 10 a.m. with the Small Business Administration. And just a reminder for the recording, as well as for the presentation, it will be uploaded by tomorrow morning at www.usbieda.org/webinars. Thank you to all and have a great evening.
Thank you.